Hello and welcome to CareSmartz360 On Air. I'm Erin Cowell, Senior Sales Consultant at CareSmartz360. Today we're joined by Joshua Stess, Paid Media Manager with a sharp focus on accurate attribution, strategic thinking, and smart campaign deployment. Using a core versus exploratory model and the Pareto principle, Joshua has helped scale recruitment and provider relations in seniors-focused home care. As a manager of 100 plus providers at Seniors Helping Seniors, he boosted applicant acquisition by 300%. Joshua will share how one franchise model even increased caregiver applications by 300%. So stay tuned. Welcome to the podcast, Joshua.
Oh, thank you, Erin. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I'll jump right in. Our first question here: what principles helped you identify and fix the root cause of caregiver turnover?
So I would say it wasn't exactly principles. It was more of a thought exercise. I took a look at a lot of the components in play and kind of took stock of each of them and then looked at that holistically. So I'll go through some. So I looked at the recruiting status quo when I got to this company, the company I work at, Seniors Helping Seniors. And I saw that, and this seems to be the case with other home care agencies also, is that they're hiring caregivers nonstop. It's continuous, um, regardless of demand or the business conditions. So I saw that. I thought to myself, like, let me make a note of that. That seems off to me. And then I took the perspective of the caregiver. I thought about the economic reality, what job they're accepting, what the job looks like. For example, within that, I finally put my finger on this, but basically what's happening in the home care industry, one reason that there's a dysfunction in recruiting is because it's really project-based work. You work with clients, they pass away, then there's like feast or famine droughts. So it's project-based work, but but the model is normal employment. So you're hired as a normal employee. So there's a mismatch there, and that's what has created this dysfunction in this industry in terms of recruiting and turnover. That's it. That's kind of the core piece that created it. So I saw that, I saw the perspective of the caregiver. I thought about the economic sustainability of being a caregiver, working in that role. Then I took a look at the business practices. So we're doing the continuous hiring. That led to, I mean, the industry benchmarks from Activated Insights is like 80% turnover for caregivers within, I think it's like the first 6 months, 3 to 6 months. And that's, you're paying for training, like 10 hours of training each new caregiver. You're paying for all those hiring costs, all the marketing costs to put up ads to bring in caregivers. And then they're turning over immediately. Like they're just gone. They don't say goodbye. They're gone in 30 days.
Yeah, great.
So I saw how wasteful that was. So the business practices, I see this as wasteful. I looked at the operational timing of this premise business wise, which is that as new big clients come in, you have a new batch of caregivers at all times. So that's the premise why the hiring is done continuously in such a wasteful way. Um, but but the timing of that matching up is actually not that viable. Like a lot of the times, it's the timing of the caregivers and the big new client. They're mismatched, and it's just a bunch of waste. So I saw that piece as well, the operational timing, and then I thought about the human ethics of it in terms of how that what happens for the caregiver because that's their livelihood. They're waiting for hours. If they're uninformed about this industry, they're going to be pulled into this situation that we're perpetuating as the recruiter. So I thought about this is their livelihood. They have big fixed bills to pay every month, and we're promising the hours that will be here in 1 week once they're onboarded and ready to go. But those hours may or may not exist. And from the past predictability, I could look at patterns and see like, okay, what I'm promising is unlikely it's a low probability that those hours will be there. So the ethics and humanity of that piece, it didn't sit right with me either. So those were the main pieces that I looked at. And, in some ways, it was a thought exercise once I had all that kind of in my field of vision. And in some ways, it was a complex puzzle to solve, but in other ways, some pieces were really easy to see the dysfunction, but some pieces were more complicated. So that's the system that I went through in order to improve retention, basically flip it on its head. So like the last 6 months, since I made some changes, I found a model within that works well. I went from 80% new hire turnover, 80 or 90% for like 6 months while I was like learning the business and just doing the status quo, down to the last 6 months, it's been like 15% turnover
Wow.
over, and I track 30, 60, 90 days and like past that. So that's how I achieved it. That's where I started in terms of thinking patterns.
That's amazing. And what framework did you use to turn early caregiver churn into that long-term retention?
So the framework, I can't share fully like the answer that I found for my company, but I can share the framework for other home care agencies that they could use to start exploring different solutions. Like I tested a lot of things and then I found one that was a success. So I have one caregiver model that works really well and is actually like extremely transformational for the whole business. And I'll say this later, that one model is not enough to sustain the staffing needs that we need to power this full business. So there needs to be other models to other demographics that I attract in terms of caregivers. So I identified the one that was successful, and I can explain how the framework I used to find that answer, but it's not the full answer to all staffing for this agency.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, so I'll talk about that. So when I got here, and this may be the case with other home care agencies, there's a one size fits all role for caregivers, just the general caregiver role. We have the same terms, the same benefits, everything for those caregivers. So when I started looking at it, I said, okay, let me see, what are our main benefits that we offer for our all one size fits all caregiver role? Because obviously issues, dysfunction, I see all those things. So I'm looking at a lot of things I can tweak and play with. So I look and I see that our main benefit is a 401k and then health insurance. For my company, we're called Seniors Helping Seniors. So we try to attract 60 plus caregivers for who we hire because we find they can relate to our clients better, and there's better rapport, better relationship, and also that they have some better professional habits as well. So a 401k and health insurance for 65, 60 plus people, neither of those benefits even hit. They completely miss our demographic. Those are the job benefits we're offering for this role. So I said, okay, well, that's one of our major demographics. That's We're not going to be successful doing that. Obviously, that should be obvious. So I started taking that one all-encompassing role apart into custom terms, custom benefits, custom terms, custom conditions for our main different demographics that we wanted to hire as our caregivers. And then that allows me to make a much more compelling offer, and allows me to retain them better. So that was kind of the highest level thinking. But within the framework, there's a bit more. So one size fits all role I know is not going to get me there. Start breaking it out, speaking to each major demographic specifically. And then I thought about the economic reality, like the plight of the caregiver. What's their economic reality? And how good is this deal for them? So I think I mentioned before, like basic math actually gave me a lot of the answers to at least the one model. I think it'll give me the answers to the others as well. So I feel like there is a resistance in this industry to look at math and do basic math. Both like I don't think this industry is a very math forward industry. And I'm just talking about arithmetic, like basic math. The caregivers that I'm interviewing every day, they kind of shy away from looking at math. So I'm like doing math on their behalf. And
Okay.
that's a piece of the perspective taking, is doing some basic math to think about their finances and what's viable, what's economically sustainable for them. So I looked at the economic reality and I could tell that it's not a reasonable deal for them. When you offer anyone a job, you're making a deal with that person. They get these things, they offer these things. So I could tell it wasn't a good enough deal. I think the overnight caregiving is like maybe a little too sweet of a deal for the caregiver, but I think the day shifts, the like little pieces of variable work, that's not a good enough deal.
Mhm.
So what I did is I thought about within my agency and the demographic um, that I want to attract for my agency, so seniors, and I thought about our core values. How do I tap into a demographic that fits that well, and I finesse those conditions that are not fair enough, finesse them in different ways, so that way I can have more customized roles with custom terms, custom benefits to find the right demographic. And then I played with some things and I found one of the answers. So, which has
Okay.
been, I mean, hugely transformational for the company so far, I believe. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. And how did you balance recruitment versus retention and decide where to invest?
Yeah. Um, Let me take a look here. So, like I said, I found one model that I feel is an answer. It's been proven out, super successful. But I knew that model, the demographic I've identified, has a finite number of people that are located within. So if you match that demographic, you're finite. That's located within the proximity to the territories that my company serves. So there's only so many out there, and there's only so many that I have the budget to actually reach. But I think the bigger problem is the finite number that exists. So I know that scaling up my numbers, um, I don't have as much agency to turn that dial in terms of a business dial to turn.
Right.
So opening up the funnel more and more to my ideal demographic, that's pretty limited in what I can do. But I did see, as I was working through these processes, this was over many months, et cetera, uh, I saw that, retention being so bad industry wide, um, that was a dial that I could play with and have much more agency to influence. I'm pretty locked in terms of the finite number of existing people that meet the demographic where I win. So I'm slowly ticking them in at
Hmm.
all times, but there's a cap on what I can do with
Right.
that. So that's how I knew to focus on retention. Like where am I going to have big impact without having to solve like the Da Vinci Code, basically.
Right.
Like yeah.
That makes sense. And what core systems must agencies build to sustainably improve retention?
Okay, so well, I'll have to start by saying that in this industry, what I've found, and many industries, the most impactful way to improve retention is through intelligent recruiting. So that's the biggest move that's going to change your outcomes the most. Um, I basically, in terms of retention, I found a model where it's like not required that they need all of this hand holding with matching to shifts and stuff as they're getting started. So I found like that it's actually not required for that demographic that I've like, it's like whatever I hit a home run on. But that's not going to power our full business. I need to hit like the professional caregivers, which have even higher turnover. So it's even more challenging. So for that, there are some core systems that you would want for retention to have in place. But I do think recruiting them in a way that's going to be economically sustainable for those professional caregivers is a lot of the answer up front.
Mhm.
They may not really realize or be motivated and good faith effort to address the economic sustainability when they're in the interview hiring seat. But what I do is like I go like 4 months ahead of where they're going to be, and I'm like almost like their financial advisor in terms of if they can accept the role. So even for the professional caregivers, that's part of the answer. But the core systems, um, I feel like on these podcasts, uh, in terms of the core systems, I feel like on the podcast, people talk about best practices a lot, and core systems. There are some best practices in the retention core systems. I want to bring value, so I don't. I try to like stay away from best practices, and just generally, my business style is the best practices are not where I live at all. Like in terms of uh, marketing to get new applicants, in terms of recruiting, like the way I do any of my like my style is away from all of that. Nothing by the book. So,
Okay.
in order to bring value, I'll talk about a couple that are less obvious, but I don't have all the answers on this one. Uh,
Sure.
or on any of them really. But I have a couple of the answers and some framework.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So okay, so let's see. With new hires, we want to reduce silos between our different departments. So that would be transferring the information about the new hires across departments. So if I hire a caregiver that is afraid of dogs that are not well trained, let's just say I want to transfer that to scheduling, so then when they're getting them started, they're very aware of that, they don't make a mistake there. There's a
Mhm.
bunch of different examples, like let's say that they're not as comfortable with helping clients with toileting. I want to make sure that, for 9 months or so, that they're just getting acclimated, they're not put into any pressure situations. Another major thing with keeping people that you recruit is uh, this is all focused in this like de-siloing from recruiting to scheduling as they get
Yeah.
started. But another major thing is scheduling has the tendency to want to fill shifts with whoever's available, because that's like a stressful event for them. And that's one of their metrics. But with new hires, they really need to be protected from fill-ins, or else they're going to turn over right away. So I have a big thing trying to protect my new hires. Like, we've invested so much in them. Like, we need to protect our investment. If you put them on fill-in shifts, that's going to be the most that's going to be every new shift is the most difficult shift possible. Every first shift with a new client. So fill-in shifts, the client's already kind of disappointed. So I think that's a way to lose a bunch of caregivers, letting them do the
Mhm.
fill-in. So operationally, we have to make up for not using that as a crutch, basically. And that allows us to help with retention too. So those are a
Yeah,
couple of the
huge.
less obvious ones. I don't have a ton that are like the most insightful in this area.
No, that's really helpful. And what you said about the fill-ins, I think is very actionable. So that's great.
Fill-ins, like you have to protect them from the fill-ins. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like if there's desperation of like they're in orientation and a scheduler comes over and introduces themselves, and like they're trying to cherry pick the people to start on like a fill-in that's for tomorrow, and it's like that person, there's a natural process they need to go through. So we have to insulate the new hires from the fill-ins, from the desperation of needing to staff things. If you do things in the right order, then you're gonna create the optimal onboarding experience for caregivers, and then you're gonna have a lot more they'll have a lot more longevity with your business.
Absolutely. And what's the biggest caregiver retention challenge this year, and how should agencies respond?
Okay. So I think I don't exactly look at uh or let's say recruiting and retention issues or challenges on a year-to-year basis in this industry. I feel like there are hard problems that were left behind that have been systemic in the industry for many years.
Hmm.
So I think it's, the easy problems were solved immediately by the home care agencies. And then the stuff that we're still dealing with, like the turnover, these things, they're the hard problems, and those got left behind. So um, I will share the challenge that I'm just arriving to now, which is like my challenge for 2026, which is uh, I am working to find a way to make hiring professional caregivers economically sustainable for the caregivers.
Hmm.
And I'm trying different things. It could be encouraging them to work with multiple agencies, and we respect each other's boundaries because it's really project-based work, but they're
Right.
set as an employee so we can supervise them. So that mismatch creates so many problems. But
Right.
that's the way it works in this industry. So I'm testing ways to make this work, but I have not found the solution to the retention fix and making it not so wasteful, and an efficiency fix for hiring professional caregivers. So that's my challenge for 2026, but
Right.
it's been here for many years. I don't think anyone's tackled it and found a solution. So I guess that's my next piece. I need this model too, and it's got to be the professional caregivers, because the 24/7 comes in. How are you going to staff that? I can't give them um, within the other model. It doesn't really support a 24/7 just coming in. instantly. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, that's helpful. And then last question for you. How are you using AI or data to predict churn and improve retention outcomes?
Okay. So um in terms, well, I'll say this. So we're not predicting churn within clients or caregivers. We are, I mean, I collect data on 30, 60, 90 days on all my hires and the retention data. And then I look at patterns, and that the pattern recognition and analysis is predictive. But in terms of clients, uh, we're not predicting it. We have just launched a care intelligence platform that across the company that allows us to help prevent churn instead of predicting. So we're doing prevention instead of predicting. But uh, basically, we don't lose clients to other care agencies. That never happens. We lose them to health problems, passing away, going to the hospital, going to rehab. So in terms of our, prevention approach is around care intelligence solution that helps it collects data that allows us to predict different health declines, areas of health decline in our clients. And
Hmm.
from that, we can use that data to empower our caregivers to help slow that decline when they go to their next shift. And we can also basically it's preventing the health health churn instead of the like being taken by other clients. So that's
Right.
that's our newest approach that we're launching
Yeah.
at seniors helping seniors for at least our locations because we're part of a bigger franchise.
Hmm. No, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate this.
Yeah,
And
cool.
to everyone listening at home, thank you so much for tuning in to CareSmartz 360 on air. We will see you next time.